Welcome back to this special edition of Up to Speed. I'm Clutch, and we're doing StarCraft, the story so far. It's been a lot of fun. Now we're winding down to the events happening just before Heart of the Swarm is released. What is at stake for these different races? We're going to get into that, but first, some questions from chat. Lauren, what are some questions we have?
All right, so I hope I don't murder this word.
Okay.
Chat wants to know if you can go into a little bit of Ulrezaj.
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 Ulrezaj. Ulrezaj, yeah, Protoss.
Why? Why can't they just call him, like, Jason? Like,
yeah.
man.
Yeah, really cool.
I mean, if you see this huge dark Archon pop through a door, he's about ready to kill you, and he goes, "Behold the power of Jason." No, it's like, Jason, shouldn't you have a mask from a lake or something? Your mom's kind of crazy. That's the kind of Jason I know. No, Ulrezaj, I believe, is the pronunciation. Kevin, I'll let you handle this.
Interesting character, definitely an interesting fellow. Basically what happens is he's a Dark Archon, except he's not formed from two Templars, Dark Templars. He's formed from 7 Dark Templars, making him arguably the most powerful Dark Archon in all of StarCraft history. Basically what happens is he's a character, one of the villains from the Dark Templar saga. He's got this sun drop, I think is what it is. No, that's the other drugs. There's lots of drugs. This is terrible.
Yeah.
This is definitely not suited for children. Lots and lots of drugs are being taken in StarCraft. You get stim packs, you get sun drop, all kinds of stuff. Basically, Ulrezaj has his own kind of ragtag Dark Templar squad going on. He's basically like a Dark Templar cult. And essentially what happens is in the Dark Templar saga, Zamara, again, the Protoss inside of Jake Ramsey's head, ends up trapping Ulrezaj inside of the same crystal that Zamara is trapped inside of. So that makes her a very interesting dynamic. So theoretically, he's not dead, but he's trapped inside of this crystal, along with Zamara. So interesting. Possibly he'll make a return?
Yeah, it's possible. There were some machinations perhaps in the past that he was manipulated by the Dark Voice. Perhaps. I think it was fueled, the character himself back in the day was fueled for his hatred against the Protoss from Ire, from separating themselves from the Dark Templar by kicking them out. He wanted to get vengeance, and that's where his first motivations come from. We may see more of him. He is a very prominent character in the Dark Templar saga. We will hopefully find out more. I don't think he was killed off Sixen, but we might have to verify that. Another question, Lauren?
Yes, I'm going to read this one off of chat.
Okay.
Could you ask Clutch what was the backstory that was going to be involved in the game StarCraft Ghost? Since the game never came out, I wonder if the story was an original story or was it based off of material already?
Well, the backstory of Nova is that she was from a wealthy family as well, and she was, I don't want to say prissy, but she was a bit of a rich girl. She's a little bit spoiled, but she also saw the political manifestations that were happening with her family involved, and she had a psionic episode where she tore down an entire building with her mind, and then she went off to join the Ghost Academy. From there, after the Academy is where the story takes place. She's working with the Terran group, and I don't know any more, Sixen, about the story itself other than the game was canceled. Was there the actual plot written out and discussed on the internet?
Yes, sort of, kinda.
Okay.
Tosh was actually one of the main players in StarCraft Ghost. I'm sure there's more information, although they kind of sort of kept things a little bit to themselves. It was actually really cool. They had it on display for testing at BlizzCon 2005, and I can say that I'm one of the 4,000 or 8,000 people that got to play it, which is so awesome. Such a great game, and I wish that they would have just ended up releasing it anyway. But alas, it's indefinitely postponed.
Yeah.
But as far as story goes, yes, it was all about you. Of course, it was like a stealth RPG, and you were Nova. All I know is Tosh played a role in that, as well as the rest of the Spectres and the Ghost program, etc.
Yeah, but in terms of entire story arc that ties in with the rest of the lore, I can't think of anything really.
So they actually ended up rolling some of the stuff from Ghost right into Wings of Liberty.
Yeah, and then they also did it in a novel form to talk about more of who Nova was and to tie it into her place in Wings of Liberty, which was really neat to do. Yeah, man. Hopefully, StarCraft Ghost and Diablo 3 PvP will be released one day.
Someday. Please don't talk about Diablo 3 PvP. That's like a spear to my heart. Oh, that's so brutal.
All right, next question, Lauren.
All right, I have a bunch of questions, and I know I can't get to all of them.
Okay.
So, guys, I'm sorry that I can't answer all of your questions. Thank you for submitting. But I'll end it with: do you think that the Taldarim?
Taldarim.
Of course. Tal'Darim. Do you think that it's going to be more important later in the lore, or is it going to like minimize?
I'm going to pocket that question because we're going to talk about that when we go into the Protoss.
Okay.
That's a really good question to have, and we're going to answer that. So stay tuned. A couple minutes, we're going to talk about the Protoss here. But Sixen, let's move into what's at stake for the Terran, okay? The Manx Dominion corruption is hurt. They are hurting. They had the Zerg wiping out a lot of different establishments and frontal assaults, and also from the inside, the political schemes of Arcturus took a blow with that broadcast. But there are two more governments that exist outside of the Terran Dominion, and that is the Emotions and the Kelmorian Combine. Now, the Kelmorian Combine was at war with the Terran Confederacy before StarCraft I happened. That's why Jim joins the military. That's what Heaven's Devils is about for the most part. So that war is stopped. They call it the Guild Wars, and that war's been over for a while, and it's when the Zerg come in, they're like, uh-oh, we got to fight the Zerg. So there hasn't been any really exchange. They're just two separate entities that exist, and they're both, the Kelmorians are more of kind of like a mining type of government, and the Emotions are like a really high-class, high-technology type government. So they still exist. Earth is still a viable option to have on this giant strategy board that is the StarCraft universe. They know what's going on. And even though their first expeditionary force got completely wiped out, they could have plans to return, possibly. And finally,
right.
Oh, go ahead, Sixen.
Before you move on, I do want to add, because you just said something that's very important. It was only their first expeditionary force. It wasn't their entire fleet. So the UED is still hanging around. Yes, they're reestablishing because they did lose quite a bit. But again, I wanted to harp on that. That was only their first expeditionary force. So there's definitely, Earth is definitely going to play a role at some point. Yeah,
I think so. But they did completely underestimate the Zerg and also the Terran Dominion themselves, and even the Protoss. Okay, well, two more things. If Jim wins this war against Arcturus Mengsk, what happens to the Terran government? Somebody has to lead this giant sector full of Terrans, especially when a war is going on. Who could lead them? As cool as Jim is, he's not that kind of leader. Can it be Valerian Mengsk? Can it be somebody else? Is it going to be chaos? Is it going to be a democracy? Is it going to be a democratic republic? Will it be a communist type style? I don't know what's going to happen, but that's a big question. What happens when Jim Raynor wins?
Honestly, I think seeing Valerian step in would make a lot of sense because, like we were talking about, he is his father's son, but at the same time, he's also standing for what his father did not. So very interesting things. Again, he's always trying to do the right thing. So I think seeing Valerian step in would probably make a lot of sense.
I feel the same way as well, and I feel Jim Raynor is starting to trust him in a sense that this person could be the next leader, the leader that people deserve. And they have.
Right. You know what I think?
What do you think, Lauren?
I think he's going to turn into a Sedooge, which spelled backwards is Judas.
Oh. No,
If everyone's name spelled backwards means traitor.
That's funny.
I wonder what Valerian is backwards. I don't know. I can't even do that. But I feel that Valerian Mengsk really proved himself in Flashpoint, or he has the greatest poker face in the world, probably even better than Kerrigan. But we shall see. We shall see. Zerg, they are leaderless at this moment. The Queen of Blades is no more, pretty much. The Zelnaga artifact wiped out their leader. But just as the Overmind, or an oversight that she saw with the Overmind, is he did not have a backup for a leader, Kerrigan did, with different pockets of leadership. I mean, you had the Cerebrits before, but now she's going to have some issues with the Broodmothers that are taking control of the Zerg themselves. The Zerg, whenever they don't have a leader, are not controlled or manipulated. Therefore, they become feral beasts. They want to destroy all things. And if they're off creep, they'll just kill anything around them and eat it. If it's a fellow ally for the Zerg, they'll wait till it's shot up and dead, then they'll start eating it. So that's how the Zerg act without having a leader, and it's really, really chaotic. Is there any way to cure the corruption? Lauren, you did bring this up in a really good question. This kind of begs the question, is the corruption because of the Dark Voice? Did he actually change some sort of protein or some sort of genome or some sort of DNA pattern within the Zerg virus itself so that he was able to put those parameters on the Overmind and control it? Or is this just how the Zerg is? I think Brian Kerrigan said the Zerg only care about the Zerg and that's it. They're not, I mean, their MO is to consume, but go ahead.
The Overmind. That was the Overmind's thought process. I think this is very important, and I believe that this is kind of where Kerrigan's going to tie in. I think that Kerrigan has to become the Queen of Blades once more, just because it'll stop the Dark Voice from being able to basically come in and control the Zerg himself. So I want to say that is how Kerrigan kind of plays her hand. Instead of allowing the Zerg to just become feral again and then become recontrolled by somebody, say the Dark Voice, this may be where Kerrigan is able to kind of take the reign of things and literally take reign of the Zerg.
This reminds me of the Warcraft universe in World of Warcraft after you defeat Arthas, that another person steps in and says somebody has to take up the helm. Somebody has to be the Lich King, otherwise the Scourge will run rampant and destroy everything. So you have to have a leader that can control them and stop them. I wonder if this same theme will be repeated in StarCraft. I kind of hope not, because I mean, we don't know yet, but we know that the Zerg act erratic and feral when they don't have a leader, and when they do, they are cold, calculating, and are able to secure many victories. I don't see Kerrigan as a sacrificial character. Like, I have to lead the Zerg or else they're going to run rampant. Why not just wipe them out? But go ahead.
Actually, that's a really good point. Why not just wipe them out? Maybe they can't. I'm not sure. That's a very good question there, Clutch. I just
get enough fire bats. Get enough fire bats so we can wipe them out.
You know, Kerrigan being part of this prophecy, it's very important that something becomes of the Zerg rather than just leaving them to be. I feel like that's very important.
And a lot of people were really upset, thinking, "Oh, the Zerg are just misunderstood." That's in a way that wasn't effectively communicated, and even Blizzard admitted to this. Like, listen, they made some mistakes in how they conveyed the story, and that's why they had the whole Q&A session with Brian Kerrigan. I implore you to check it out to get some really detailed answers from Blizzard themselves. They answer a lot of good questions on what people think are plot holes and how Blizzard explains it's not really a plot hole. That's explained why. And there's only so much you can fit into an 8 to 12 hour experience, but all the same, there's a good, better, best way to tell a story here, and the best way wasn't always executed. But are there more Xel'Naga contingency plans? I mean, these relics are found all over the world, man, and they have to go to different worlds to find them. These Xel'Naga towers are popping up in places which are used in the multiplayer.
Talking about that a little bit more, Xel'Naga temples are popping up in places that they did not exist in previously. And then in addition, you know, within the 4-year span between Brood War and Wings of Liberty, all of a sudden these new Xel'Naga buildings called Xel'Naga Watchtowers are starting to pop up. Yes, they're being used in multiplayer matches, but they're still part of the lore. So all of a sudden we have these weird, you know, new Xel'Naga buildings that didn't previously exist. So somebody from the Xel'Naga still has to be out there. And I almost think that this is kind of where Samir Duran fits in. Again, maybe he is the Dark Voice, maybe he's not. And I forgot to mention that before. The Dark Voice is in the future alternative universe. Perhaps he actually is Samir Duran in the future. We've seen him in the form of Samir Duran. We've seen him in the form of Dr. Newerth. Maybe he is the Dark Voice, just assimilating different characters in the StarCraft universe.
There's only one way to find out, and that's on Blizzard's time. So all I can do is
7-8 years down the road.
Yeah,
I'm just kidding.
I realize they'll probably be 30 years old when Legacy of the Void comes out.
Me too.
Oh, man. It's worth it. It's worth it. Okay. Let's talk about the Protoss and answer this question that somebody brought up about the Tal'Darim. The Tal'Darim were a splintered off group going back to, you know, the different tribes of the Protoss. They were fanatics. They wanted to, they didn't worship, but they used the Terrazine gas for their own ends. And this, what I believe, is going to be the campaign for Legacy of the Void. And I know we're jumping the gun a little bit because there's still so much to happen in Heart of the Swarm. But the Protoss are still a scattered race. And they still cling on to these ancient traditions that are not helping them today. And they need to get rid of those and combine under one flag if they're going to stand against the tide that is coming to destroy the universe. So in the single-player campaign, I can imagine Zeratul or any hero, Artanis, going to the different tribes and telling them, listen, we are all Protoss. If the Xel'Naga are coming or whatever is coming, we have to stand together if we're going to stop it, or we're not going to survive. And that's where we see these different tribes like the Tal'Darim or other Protoss tribes that can unite under one Protoss banner. What we saw in StarCraft II Wings of Liberty is that they were, like I said, fanatics, and were not the same Protoss that Jim had come to know. Tychus makes that very, very clear when he talks to him. You know, to get over these racial issues, also there is a very intriguing position that the Protoss are in now, because they have to unlock more technology to stand against the tide of the Zerg. And one of that pieces of technology is the Colossus. And there is this scare among some of the Protoss that after the war is won, or could be won against the Zerg or any kind of skirmish or whatever, that the Colossus could be turned against the Dark Templar, because some fanatics will feel that they are a curse, that they should not be associating themselves with the Templar whatsoever. They will hang on to those ancient traditions and want to eradicate them using that technology unearthed in order to stop the Zerg, turning it on the Dark Templar. I feel that that could be a very, very enthralling story for the Legacy of the Void expansion. But of course, Kevin, you know, I'm just theory crafting here. What are your thoughts?
Oh, sure. I'm in a little bit of a disagreement there. If we look at Artanis, and actually, I wanted to take a couple steps back. You mentioned how the Protoss are going to need to unite for the potential second coming of the Xel'Naga. Very interesting. Kerrigan mentioned something along those lines in Wings of Liberty. Basically, just that, you know, you're going to be dreading their second coming, or something along those lines is the exact quote. But yes. Going back to Artanis, Tassadar made him Executor, which was previously the highest rank of the Protoss. Again, Tassadar did this, you know, in his dying breath as he was killing himself for the greater good, basically killing the Overmind. So he makes Artanis the Executor, and then we find out that Artanis has actually been promoted to this new rank called Hierarch. And it's my personal belief that Artanis' job is to do exactly what you said, to unite the tribes, bring everybody back under one flag. And this is kind of why I feel like he wouldn't let the Colossus go after the Dark Templar. Artanis he fought alongside Phoenix. He's fought and actually worked a lot with Zeratul. So at the same time, you know, he also knew Tassadar. So I feel like he was, and it's very important to point out that he's the youngest. Was the youngest Executor, also the youngest Hierarch, so he's still a young guy. He's like 260 years old or something like that, but young in terms of Protoss ages. Very important to point that out. He still kind of looks up to Zeratul, so I feel like being taught by Zeratul and Phoenix and Tassadar, he's going to unite everybody and ensure that that doesn't happen. Yeah.
Well, I feel that Heart of the Storm, of course, is the story of Sarah and the Zerg, and maybe some things will be tied up. Some storylines will be tied up within the expansion, but the rest is going to be the Protoss. And that's, so many people are like, well, there's barely any Protoss in Wings of Liberty. And, you know, well, I don't know how much it's going to be in Heart of the Swarm, but it's definitely going to be the Protoss campaign for Legacy of the Void. And I wonder if some of them feel that the inevitable has to occur. They have to combine with the Zerg in order to stop the tide that's coming. If maybe the combination doesn't mean a physical combination, maybe it means two races that work together in a certain point of view. The Protoss, they were pretty decimated, and now they are trying to get rid of their underestimations of the Terran, and also to completely stop the Zerg. So that's what's at stake for them. Hopefully we'll see more of them in Heart of the Swarm. There are a couple hints of them showing up in the cinematics. Anything else we need to add about what's at stake for the three races before we jump into what we would like to see to Heart of the Swarm and then close out, Sixen?
It's very interesting what you just said, because it's almost like they're trying to stop the Xel'Naga from being reborn again, in terms of this hybrid race again, as they would technically be the rebirth of the Xel'Naga. It's very interesting. Perhaps that they may need to do that, you know, on their own terms. So as far as what's at stake, each race, yes, they have to do what's best for them, but at the same time, they also have this dark voice character that's kind of out in the middle of nowhere, trying to do his own thing while manipulating everybody. So it almost seems like the universe is in turmoil.
Yeah, it does. It is in turmoil, but that's why it's so fun. That's why it's so, I mean, this universe is so brutal, and a lot of people were thinking, this isn't the same brutal universe that I grew up with StarCraft and Brood War, if the Zerg are just this misunderstood race. And Blizzard came out and said, they're not guys, they want to destroy everything that's not Zerg. So wrapping up here, one of the most important parts about Flashpoint is that Sarah is starting to unlock more and more of her power, and she is more powerful than when she was. Now, if you guys remember starting multiplayer out, 3 years ago almost, for Wings of Liberty, you had a number of portraits that you could select, and one of them was a female engineer that you see in one of the cinematics when Tychus and Jim are having a little brawl. And her name's Annabelle Thatcher, and she actually plays a bigger role in Flashpoint. She comes up with a schematic to put weapons on the dropship, the fanfare that Jim Raynor uses, and those weapons come in handy when they go in to rescue Sarah Kerrigan, Egon Stetman, and Jim Raynor and Valerian Manx, who were captured at the Mobius Foundation when Dr. Newerth turned on them. Sarah, and they're being chased by a hybrid too as well. Sarah realizes that there's no way to get to the dropship unless she unleashes her full amount of power. She does in this righteous fury and annihilates all her enemies in their path. Unfortunately, Annabelle Thatcher was at the rear of the dropship, waiting to rescue them to open the door, and her the psionic pulse from Kerrigan hit her and killed her. So she was a casualty of war. Her brain just shut off. And that's the emotions that are running right now when we start Heart of the Swarm. There is this sense of dread around Sarah Kerrigan that nobody knows who she is, what she is. Nobody knows if they can trust her. They don't know if she's still part of the Zerg. And it's really, really sad, man, because Annabelle was... there was so much more to her, and she was kind of this person that did her job, that did such a good job doing it in such a brutal universe. It was just, this flower in the desert. And the way that she died, it just put everybody in a really, really sad, cautious, angry mood against Sarah. And that's what Sarah has to deal with, and that's why Jim is pretty much her only ally, even amongst the Terrans.
Yeah, she's blowing everybody else's heads up.
Yeah, well, so what happens is Sarah understands that she needs to go to a serious medical facility and to be checked out to find out who she is. And they go to the I believe it's a Kelmorian Combine Research Facility. It might be the Emotion. It's one of the governments outside of the Terran Dominion. And Jim looks at her, she looks at Jim, and they both say to each other, "I love you," as she descends the elevator. And that's pretty much where Heart of the Swarm, I believe, is going to start off, guys. She is in that facility. So that's the tension, and that's what's at stake for these three races for Heart of the Swarm. What I would like to see, we're definitely going to see Kerrigan have some serious vengeance against Mix. She's going to be hell-bent on stopping him. Jim is trying to sway her, "Don't do this. I fought heaven and earth. I moved heaven and earth to rescue you, and now you're just bent on this vengeance." And I think it's going to be a sad downward spiral for Sarah. And in the end, I feel that Jim Raynor will be the man that kills Sarah Kerrigan in the end. I think he will still uphold that promise that she feels that she had to do what she had to do, but she loses it. So
I don't think he can do it.
No? I don't know. That's going to be really hard. That's going to be really hard if he can pull that trigger.
It'd be interesting. That would definitely be interesting, because at that point he would be going against Zeratul.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you're right, Kevin.
He would make the prophecy come to pass.
Yeah, I know. One man holds her life. Just as Zeratul says, you hold her life in your hands. So one dude holds the fate of the universe in his hands, man.
I think they're going to hook up and birth the fourth race.
You heard it here first. Take bets.
That's my prophecy.
Lauren may be onto something. That's your prophecy? Okay.
Just taking the facts, and I'm playing it out.
Well, we'll find out if you're a prophetess. Coming up soon. Kevin, I really appreciate you coming on the show and your vast knowledge of the world of StarCraft. Finishing out here, what would you like to see in Heart of the Swarm? What kind of characters would you like to see in the expansion coming out in just 3 days?
Well, I mean, there's definitely a couple interesting things that could happen. Not necessarily that I would like them to happen, but I mean, I did some theory crafting with the guys at SC Legacy. We see in the trailer that Kerrigan fights Zeratul. Maybe Kerrigan kills Zeratul, and now Jim Raynor is stuck. Well, what does he do?
Oh man!
Because now he's just witnessed her kill. A lot of Protoss friends. She's brutal. Like, she kills a lot of people. And now Zeratul, Phoenix a couple times, Zeratul now. So what does he do? Maybe he does kill her. I'm not sure. Regardless, I mean, there's definitely a lot of characters I want to see come back. I want to see the Zelnaga make a play. I want to see Samir Duran. I want to see Tassadar have more to do with this. Again, I mean, Jake Ramsey would be so cool to see. So lots of interesting stuff. Not that I necessarily want to see particular things happen, or that I think something's going to happen. I won't say anything, although I'd love to see Tassadar Zeratul make an Archon and make like this sick, amazing, crazy, Twilight Archon thing. But anyway, cool stuff. Just characters that I would love to see make a return.
It's funny, man. I think of Jim Raynor, and I think of him as Han Solo, and I think of Jake Ramsey, and I think of him as Indiana Jones. So if they did a StarCraft II movie, they'd have to hire Han Solo. They'd have to cast him in some part or another. He may be a little bit too old, but for one of those parts.
Ford,
yes. He's got to be in it. He's got to be in it. All right. Well, since we've wound things down here, I want to remind everybody that Heart of the Swarm comes out this Tuesday. Myself, Sixen, and Lauren Elise are going to be there at the launch party. So looking forward to it. A big shout out to everybody across the world to be going to their individual parties. Now's the time where we do shout outs. Again, Kevin Carlino, a.k.a. Sixen, thanks for coming out. The floor is yours for any kind of shout outs that you have, sir.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for having me on. This was a blast. I love talking about lore, especially for Blizzard's games, Diablo, StarCraft, all great stuff. I really enjoyed myself here. You guys can follow me on Twitter at Sixen. I'm also doing a little bit of Blizzard All-Stars videos, so definitely check those out if you get a chance. Otherwise, shout out to SC Legacy. Like I said, I do a lot of theory crafting with those guys over there. It's lots of fun.
All right. Thank you, Sixen. Lauren, Elise, thanks for moderating chat for us and picking out some really great questions. Were you able to learn anything in our lore expedition?
How to pronounce the words. Oh, my goodness. No, I actually learned a lot. You know, when you asked me to do this, I was really excited because when I started playing StarCraft like 6 months ago, I wanted to play it through the campaign, but everybody was talking about laddering, so I felt like I had to just jump on that bandwagon and just start trying to ladder. So I missed the lore. So I didn't play through the campaign, so I didn't know all this history. So I mean, sitting here and listening to you go from the top all the way until what's coming out on Monday makes me understand a lot more about what's going on, and I'm definitely going to play through the campaign in HOTS.
Good.
For sure.
Good.
I'm not
Good.
going to ladder in HOTS. That's going to, like, just murder me.
Finish the campaign
So
first.
I'll do the campaign.
All right. Well, thanks for joining me on here, Lauren, and thanks for everybody for their questions via chat. You can follow me on Twitter at Clutch08. I'm a huge fan of the lore. I love to tell stories, and I love when stories are told in such an intricate and even vast way, and to me that is the lore of StarCraft. I love it. I really look forward to sitting down with some of the writers of the StarCraft team to talk about how they come up with characters and how they tie in to the overarching story of redemption and hope found in a universe that is so brutal across 3 races or more. This has been Up to Speed Special Edition, StarCraft, the story so far. Thanks for watching.